Hey everyone, it's Lindsay. We're in week 7 of the semester. Last week we talked about race ethnicity as a special sort of demographic comorbidity for mental and emotional health. And then this week we're going to talk about 2 different populations. They're not connected. I just chose to lump them both together to look at 2 different sort of perspectives now that we've broken down sort of race ethnicity. This week we're going to look at sort of veterans and the veteran community and their unique sort of special demographics that make them at higher risk for mental illness and mental health distress, and how we navigate those sort of things, and then the LGBTQ community as a separate sort of community. So when it comes to veterans, this is a really hard place for a lot of people to talk about. Number one, veterans are a very unique population because they do something that almost nobody else does, right? They are there to go and fight, even possibly die for the freedom of everyone else, right? When it comes to military issues and it comes to war and fighting and all these sort of things, there's a lot of complicated political dynamics. One of the things that I always like to make a point about when I talk about veterans and their mental health is that it is totally possible to be pro-veteran and anti sort of military and anti sort of conflict, right? It is a different sort of thing to say, I don't want to send people to war. I don't want people to have to die. I don't want people to have to go and do things that are sort of unnatural to human sort of stuff. And if people choose to do that, I'm still going to choose to support them, right? And so I think that's a really important concept. Again, in American society, we're not really good at nuance. And so oftentimes people will be like, either you're pro-veteran or you're anti-veteran. And that's not actually true. You can be pro-veteran and anti-war. The idea that we shouldn't send people to war or to go fight for our country for bad reasons, for politically kind of nebulous reasons or other sort of things. And so it's really important that we clarify that from the beginning. When people sign up to go into the military, for the most part, people are going because they believe deeply in patriotism. They believe deeply that they want to give something of themselves to their country. And that is an honorable and good sort of thing. Also, those of us who are anti sort of military or anti sort of global conflict also believe we shouldn't just randomly send people off into war zones unless it's a really good idea, unless it's something that is unavoidable and we can't get past it, right? And if we're going to send people to go and fight in wars and do these sort of things, when they come home, we damn sure better take care of them, right? And so this is where we get lost in a lot of political translation. People will say, yes, pro-military, let's give a whole bunch of weapons and money for war and all these sort of things, and yet what happens when veterans come back? Oftentimes what we see is that veterans who have given so much of themselves, who have been trained to do things that are not natural sort of to humans, come home and they come home broken and they come home hurt and they come home in all these different sort of ways. And what's waiting for them at home? Oftentimes some not really good things. This week there are 2 different videos I'm going to have you watch. One about the experience of a man who returns from the Iraq War and some of the ways that he had trouble readjusting to society, how he asked for help and how he didn't get it. Those are the kind of things that we have to think about when we think about sort of vets and we think about people who have served our country. How are we making sure that they're okay when their service is over? I would argue in the US, we're not super great at that. The other video from this week is about sort of a veteran's family. So not only is the vet themselves impacted sort of by war and by going away and doing all these other sort of things, but how does their family get affected by this? We know there's a lot of ways that families have effects, so whether it be the spouse or the children. And so this other video for this week is about sort of the children who are left at home and what sort of mental health issues they are impacted by when vets come home and they are suffering from PTSD or other sort of things. Really important sort of stuff. Both of the videos for the vet section this week are pretty emotional, so take your time with them. They're really good and really powerful, but it definitely brings up this sort of idea of how can we value vets and still say, yeah, we want to be really careful with where we send our military in order to make sure that they're not being harmed in certain ways. And if they are harmed, how are we going to take care of them when we get back? Okay. Now to switch to the other sort of group we're talking about this week is the LGBTQ community. When we talk about sort of the LGBTQ community, there's a lot of reasons that we talk about these sort of things. Much like when we talked about race ethnicity last week, people who are LGBTQ experience mental illness and mental health distress at higher rates than the non-LGBTQ population. And that's not because being LGBTQ is inherently something bad. No, people experience this mental health distress because of the way that people treat them because they're different, right? When you think about sort of the objectification of LGBTQ people, we're seen as sexual people first and humans sort of second. Well, yeah, when you're treated like an object that is debated on whether you have rights, whether you can love people, whether you should be treated well, yeah, that causes a lot of mental health distress. Even further within our trans population, there's just people who flat out are rude and mean and violent towards trans people. Yeah, that's going to create some mental health distress, right? Now, thinking about how do LGBTQ people navigate sort of any healthcare system in particular, but mental health care specifically, there's a lot of different ways that it is a struggle for a lot of LGBTQ people, heavy emphasis on the T's, trans people, how they navigate sort of the system. If people don't believe that you are the gender that you say you are, if people don't understand what it means to be somebody who is in a same-sex partnership, oftentimes you get very frustrated and you just avoid healthcare altogether. And so we see a lot of people avoiding sort of mental health care systems just because it's overwhelming to be able to try and say, hey, I need help, but now I also have to educate you about who I am. And so the videos this week give a little bit of voice to different LGBTQ people talking about sort of navigating the mental health system, as well as just the health system in general. If you're trying to go get help and assistance, how can you do that when the people that you're seeking help from maybe are not kind or don't understand who you are or don't know anything about your life? Those can be really big sort of things. So again, this week is just looking at two other sort of populations. And then this week's discussion is just around sort of how do we accommodate for all these sort of things? We can't be professionals in every demographic, in every sort of way of knowledge, but how can we accommodate when people say, hey, here's something that I'm facing that makes my mental health more challenging than maybe some other people that you've worked with? How do we accommodate for that? How do we learn to do these sort of things so that everybody has equal access and equal equity when it comes to mental and emotional health? Okay. Finally, this week's moment of Zen is progressive muscle relaxation. For some people, sort of the idea of meditating or other sort of things seems really overwhelming, right? Like, how can I have a clear brain? I'm just going to start thinking about all the things I shouldn't be thinking about. For some people, progressive muscle relaxation is a really great way around this sort of thing. It is a mindfulness-based practice, but it also is focused on doing something rather than not doing anything and to have sort of an empty brain. Progressive muscle relaxation works through sort of your body systems by tensing and relaxing different sort of parts of your body with the goal of stress relief. There's a video up this week about progressive muscle relaxation. There are tons of PMR videos out there. If this is something that works for you, try integrating this into your sort of daily practice of how to get your body to relax and go through sort of the process to create some better sort of body-based awareness. All right, I will see you next week. Bye.